text messages that come in, a social life you want to have, a gym that's membership that you're paying for, kids that need raising, food. Like, what the F? How in the world are we supposed to manage all of that? And the answer is you're not. You're not supposed to do it all like that. You're supposed to do a handful of things really, really well.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's Jeff Heilman project episode. My name is Jessica and I'm sitting, of course, with Mr. Jeff Heilman, the project himself.
Yes, that's about right.
And we, in lieu of all of the current circumstances in the state of the world today, we want to keep this podcast light, encouraging, uplifting, and just let you know that we are thinking about you. We're praying for you. And as most podcasts go, we're continuing to advocate for freedom of speech, and therefore we will be unscripted and uncensored as we always are. So with that, we all want success. We're hope for success. Jeff, what would you say would be the number one A1 common denominator between all of the biographies we've read, the biopics we've watched that have successful people, that if you could boil it all down to one common denominator, what do you think that would be for success and keeping success going to the next generation?
That's a really good question, and I think you can look at it from several different angles. If I look at just pure productivity, success is pure productivity, I would say it's momentum.
Mm-hmm.
Momentum that builds and then pulls resources and capital and people and ideas and resources and capital and people ideas. I think that's what creates the big difference between people that are working hard at 20 and people who are leading companies that work hard when they're in their 50s and 60s. Napoleon Hill calls it hypnotic rhythm, which would be a whirlpool. When a boat kind of goes near a whirlpool, the whirlpool pulls it around, and if it can steer away from it in the beginning, it's fine, but eventually it pulls it to the point where it can't escape. And I think success is like that whirlpool. And the more you spin it, you get the flywheel of momentum going. That's the biggest thing that I see, because if you look at the music industry, there's people who've made $1 billion in the music industry. If you look at the gaming industry, gaming is bigger than all media combined. And yet, if you look at the people in technology, that's 100 times more than we now have 3 people whose net worths are north of $200 billion, maybe more than that. $200 billion?
More than certain countries are worth, that's for sure.
I mean, even adjusted for inflation, that's like bigger than Rockefeller, like 2x or 3x of where Rockefeller
And I love that you bring up momentum as being like one of the key caveats to being successful, because I do feel that if you're going to consider success, you have to consider that the pendulum swings both ways. Like, you have to recognize that success isn't just always moving forward, because if you're only ever moving forward, then eventually you can run out of steam and run out of momentum. But the recognition with centrifugal force and with the pendulum that it's going to take this, there's this hypnotic rhythm, there's this dance, there's this pull, there's this push, there's this need for kinetic energy that feeds off of the energy that was coming before it, and the pushes and the pulls. And so, like, a big part of ongoing success and keeping success going is recognizing that this pendulum does swing both ways. And in order for us to have success, sometimes that's going to mean stepping back. Sometimes it's going to mean stepping forward. Sometimes it's going to be 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 5 steps forward, 10 steps back, but that there's a constant successful, and I would think that would be, inner peace, like being able to maintain success long term and ongoing is making sure that you're okay with the roller coaster ride of success, and the ups and the downs and the pulls and the pushes.
Yeah. And I think when you look at how do you build a business, I think most people look at what do we got to do to get momentum. And I think that the great ones look at it as, what do we need to do to protect against losing momentum?
Mm-hmm.
Napoleon was adamant about attack early, often in one focused spot in an army, and they cannot defend against it. An army that's focused on a single point in the line is going to break the line and win that battle. And he was good at killing men. He killed 3 million guys on his own side, not including the people that his teams killed. And so he had to figure out triage hospital situation and how do we keep the men from dying of stupid stuff that they shouldn't die of, right? I've been working on a model to explain this of basically how do you guarantee that you can build wealth? Because not everything you do is going to work. Not every idea is going to work. But effectively, I've come up with a way of explaining it, and it's a cube. And this is the first time, I'm a little nervous about it, to be honest, but this is the first time that I've shown this to the public. And it's something I've been working on for, a few months at least. But effectively, it's an X, Y, and Z axis with a W factor and a T factor. And the X axis...
Not WTF.
No, there's no F. There's no F.
Can you describe a little bit for those that are listening what it when you have the drawing you showed it?
The picture that I had in my mind was a cube with like a door through it.
Okay.
And the door just a doorway, like a mouse hole.
Mm-hmm.
And the mouse hole, the way that it had occurred to me is like when you're cutting. I was watching a bunch of YouTube videos on like how leather is made and how leather for Ferraris is stitched and cut and everything. It's beautiful. And I was imagining a pattern for a seat, for a Ferrari seat, and how that pattern is laid out for what ultimately will become a 3-dimensional object, but it's laid out on a 2-dimensional surface. And I was imagining how they cut leather and there's going to be some scrap. There's going to be some leftover from it. And the goal is to try to get the best piece of leather that you can and get the pattern as tightly fit so that there's as least amount of waste as possible. Well, I thought of this as a 3-dimensional version of cutting a piece of leather to where I was actually cutting a volume of a cube in a mouse hole, like a 3-dimensional mouse hole with depth to it. And I thought of that like that represents a unit of time, that brick would represent a unit of time. And how do we keep the scrap to a minimum for a cube of time that's, say, 20 minutes, right? And so, and then I started thinking, well, if we're going to cut the scrap out of a volume of a cube, we would need to know what the volume is composed of. You know, if anybody's asking if I do, psychedelic mushrooms or microdosing, no, that's not the case. I was literally just working hard one day and I had this picture pop into my head about a cube. And I was thinking about volumes and I was thinking about saving scraps. And I was thinking about time in the form of these cubes and thinking about if I could see time as a whole bunch of little cubes, I would want to know how could I get the most out of every 20-minute block of time that I possibly could. And so I started thinking about, well, what are the variables that make that possible? And the first variable is intensity. And so if you reverse engineer how well you can pay attention to something, how much intensity of focus you can put behind it, the key to that is really about recovery, restoration and recovery. And so the x-axis for my cube is what am I doing on a daily basis to recover spiritually? And, spiritually could mean anything. It could be for you going out into the forest and hugging trees or looking at salamanders or just enjoying the wind on your face or going for a walk or crunching leaves under your feet. Some people get a sense of spiritual ASMR from that. And I'm not here to say this is not a religious subject matter. That this is...
Well, it's restoration is what you're talking about.
It's restoration, right? And then physically, what are we doing to get restored? My life changed when I started lifting weights. My life changed when I started meditating in scripture and praying and spending quiet time alone with my maker, my creator. And then mentally, what are we doing to read books that make us think, that stir our imagination? And then emotionally, and I would say that emotionally for me really comes to family time, quality family memories, and art and music. And so if I push play on the jukebox of my life, I'm going to be getting restored. So if we look at restore to intensity is the x-axis. And when I think of that, when I worked for Oracle for a long time, each of the processes are do a thing to get to something. So there's a process in accounting called order to cash. You book an order, and eventually that order becomes cash. And how does that work? There's something called CPQ, configure price to quote. Then there's record to report. So you take a data and then you eventually produce a report. There's procure to pay. That's you issue a purchase order, and then the purchase order comes back in the form of an invoice, and then you pay that invoice. That's called procure to pay. There's another one called hire to retire. You onboard somebody, and then eventually they leave the company. They die or they quit, or you fire them or lay them off or whatever. But there's a process. So to me, the way I looked at each of the axes of the cube was through a lens of ERP, enterprise resource planning, which the x-axis is restore to intensity. For the y-axis, you're looking at a beat of time, and I look at it through the TOC, or the constraint theory, which says, and I mean, gosh, I'm almost falling asleep when I'm saying this myself because it sounds so dull and so boring when I hear myself say it, and I love to hear myself talk. But if you could understand, what if you could actually take away the thing that's keeping you from being productive, so that you were masterful in the use of your life in 20-minute increments? Think about how productive you would be.
And that goes back to the considering of keeping success going. I think that always we have to consider everyone's definition of success is going to be different. Some people's definition of success is just, having a day where you're not coughing, like if you have emphysema or allergies. And some people's the billionaire's definition of success is going to be a lot more different than the teacher, the person who feels that they're called to be a school teacher. So when there's a definition of success, I believe in what you're talking about. I think we can miter it away to something that's able to some form of whatever your ideology is being passed on to a generation beyond you, and then also how we're able to use our time effectively so that whenever we do go to be with our maker, we feel like we had added value, or at least lived a life where it wasn't wasted, right? Like that's, I think that we can all agree that what you're talking about in your developing of your cube is on point, in the sense that the minimal amount of scraps of time that we leave behind, the better. And the being able to be the most effective with our time and be able to feel the most on purpose, living our lives on purpose, is a really good indicator of how successful we will feel when we kind of come to the end of our lives.
I mean, you think about a guy like Steve Ballmer. Steve Ballmer is now twice as wealthy as Bill Gates. Now, granted, Bill Gates he lost a lot of money in the divorce, for one, and then he started he
has a lot of foundations.
Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where he donated a lot of his money to solving world hunger and stuff. Steve Ballmer worked for Microsoft. He was employee number 30. He didn't even found Microsoft. Steve Ballmer's worth $200 billion. That's insanity. He's the 8th richest man in the world, and he was just CEO of Microsoft. Like he's just a job. He didn't found the company.
W-2, baby.
W-2. W-2 worked for Ballmer. I met him actually. He was on the floor at the Warriors game in the seat, like over to the front, and Kevin tried to get a picture of him, and Kevin was wearing a Chris Mullin jersey from the Warriors. I can't have that. No, I'm not going to. It's like our kids go to church together, Steve. Come on.
That's funny.
It was really a good moment, but no, he wouldn't do it. He was faithful to the brand, so I appreciate that, I guess. But I got so fascinated by this. I've been working on this for a while, and I've been working on just trying to get a system that made sense to me. So I'll continue, and if you want to listen, you can listen, and if you don't want to listen, then you can just kill the podcast right in the middle.
As I said, we are pro free speech podcast.
Nobody's going to shoot me for talking about my cube. Okay. Ratings are going to drop. So
Andrew's watching the time clock on YouTube.
You got to string them along another 6 minutes, Dad. Otherwise, I can't publish this. So the next aspect, the y-axis over a beat of time, is how can you stay focused for a beat of time? And this is where procrastination comes in as a great. Procrastination is phenomenal. Such a great thing. Because what it does is it tells you that whatever you think you're working on right now or should be working on is not the most important thing. You are messing up somewhere. You are royally screwing up because you are doing something that is not the most important thing to get to your goal. And if we look at Benjamin Hardy and the work that he's doing along the lines of scaling, science of scaling, Y is constraint to focus. So TOC, or theory of constraint, says it's what Elon Musk uses in each of his companies, which talks about every week he goes in and he finds out what the biggest problem is, and then he focuses the entire company on solving that problem that week. And then he goes and solves the next biggest problem the next week. And so at the end of the year, he's solved, while all the other boards are getting ready to do the PowerPoint deck for the prep meeting for the Elon Musk has solved 52 of the biggest problems in that company's business each year. And constraint theory is if you take constraint by identifying the number one blocker, and then you focus all of your energy and effort on it. And I've been trying this now for a little while. At the beginning of the day, I'll figure out what is the single biggest constraint that's keeping my business from growing. And it's amazing when you have a little king of the mountain game to find out what's actually, and sometimes it changes throughout the day if you have a fire, but to be able to take that signal and say, I'm going to focus all of my energy and effort on just solving this one thing. And I ended up coming up with what I call my 10 Minute Billionaire standard operating procedure, my 10 Minute Billionaire SOP. That came from constraint theory in an effort to appease this y-axis of constraint to focus. So now you have your x-axis, which is resting to intensity. And then you have constraint to focus for the period of time of the work beat, even to the point where I take the biggest constraint, then I say, okay, I'm going to have pure signal of what is this big, take the goal, then you go to the pure signal on the constraint, and then you break that constraint into a pixel, one pixel, and then take that pixel and run it through a Kanban board to where the resistance to starting any project for me, no matter how much money it's going to make, step number one is literally to grab my yellow pad and draw a circle in the upper right-hand corner and give it a name. That's actually first two steps. First step is grab my yellow pad. Second step is draw a circle, call it goal, and then name it, whatever the goal is. That's step number one. Step number two is draw a triangle, which represents a constraint that's a road blocker, a caution flag in the road. And then I draw an arrow from that constraint to, that comes from the guy from Wolf on Wall Street. He talked about straight line selling, drawing a line directly to where you're trying to go. Jordan Belfort. And then I draw a box, and then I make that box into a little calendar icon, and I pick one little pixel. So what I want to know coming out of that, my first three steps for any project is, what is my goal? What is the biggest constraint? And then what is a pixel? A bite size so tiny that it's ridiculous to even think that it would be productive, but it is. And then you take that tiny piece and you break it into a little mini Kanban board, and I can post, I'll get a picture that Andrew can post to show you what this actually looks like. Because I want to reduce the resistance through constraint theory to the business as fast as I can by putting as much force behind the smallest thing that's actually going to move the needle, so that I can work at the end of an 18 or 20 hour day and still make progress if I'm trying to get something done. And I'll give you an example. I had a couple meeting invites. Sending out a meeting invite is hard for me. I will typically procrastinate on doing it. I don't like building meeting invites. So I built a meeting invite standard operating procedure, and that kind of worked. But then I started to apply this 10-minute billionaire process. And I fell asleep in my recliner upstairs a couple of days ago. And there were 2 invites. It was Monday morning at like 2:15 in the morning. And we have East Coast people that need to be in a meeting at 10 a.m. on Monday, and I still hadn't sent it yet. And I had finished this 10-minute billionaire algorithm, standard operating procedure, and I used it, and I was able to get the first one done with no resistance. At middle of the night, I'm exhausted. I'd worked 14 hours that day. It was a Sunday, and I worked 14 hours. But I was able to get the meeting invite out, and then I did it again for another meeting invite, which will be for, it was like Wednesday. It wasn't the same day, but it was Wednesday. I did them both. There was 20-plus people. They needed a RACI, a project management update, an agenda. They needed to have the right people. It needed to be done at the right time. I have teams, and it was really an ordeal. And I got them both shipped, and then I went and slept like I was dead for the next 3 hours. It was fantastic sleep. And I was able to get something done when I was exhausted. That, to me, is a function of rest and recovery and being able to use constraint theory to get your mind totally focused on something so that you can push through the difficult things that we have to do in our lives with no distractions. And then you start stacking that on top of each other, and it starts to get pretty exciting. So that's the y-axis for the cube. How are we doing? Do we need to have another episode?
Well, I think
yet?
that we can definitely continue. I think we should continue talking about the cube and how you're able to successfully have a model that you can plug your time and your energy into. I'm thinking, as you're talking about this, about the book that I'm currently listening to on Audible, which is Play It Away. And in Play It Away, it's so cool because he talks about how play is the antidote to workaholism, play is the antidote to anxiety. And the more that I hear you talking about, because you've always been, as long as I've known you, you've been a system builder. You've been and whether it's this cube or getting things done or some other form, I believe even our very first podcast of the Jeff Heilman Project was about like the 9 daily disciplines that Jeff has. And it's just after listening to...
I wonder if I still do those.
After listening to Play It Away and understanding play, I think you're playing, not that it's not serious, but this is actually being in your laboratory is totally play for you.
Thinking about how to make things easy.
Yeah, and it's
so
play.
That I don't have to work.
It's a game that you play when you are thinking and considering systems and building systems, and you actually, it gives you the energy that you need in order to be successful. So that to kind of roll snowball, if I can, kind of the idea of Jeff's cube and his systems for being able to use his time the most wisely, I can say that that in and of itself is a form of play, and playing is a awesome way to keep success going. If you can play at what you're doing, if you can have fun doing what you're doing, regardless of whether it becomes monetized or you're just going to continue to have this momentum, this rolling ball of continued success because you're actually enjoying, you're having fun, you're playing, you're able to like bring the people along with you that notice you're having fun and they want to have a fun. And so then now we're creating this community of like-minded people who are ready and excited to have fun. So I would say definitely that if you're going to continue to concentrate on success being an ongoing thing, as much as you make fun of how dry, possibly listening to the inner workings of your cube and stuff. It's
pretty dry.
To me, it's an example of
you
in your laboratory playing and being able to create these systems in your laboratory of your mind is awesome and it's exciting and it's fun for you. And because it's fun for you and you're not doing it because you're expecting a monetary outcome necessarily, I think that anytime that we have fun, every time I've ever done an art project that I've just had fun playing, somebody wants to buy it. Somebody wants me to make another one so that they can have it. And it's like, wait, I wasn't even intending on making any money doing this thing, but it's the thing because it's got so much joy in it and so much fun in it that resonates the most with others. And so I
Yeah.
do know that this cube and that this system that you've made, and I would love to continue talking about it in the future, is going to continue to roll out and become the bricks for more success moving forward because you created it in your playtime.
Yeah, and I think that the problem statement is when you have 200 email, 40 Slack channels, 50 pages of notes from Yellow Pad from meetings, a calendar that's full,
messages.
text messages that come in, a social life you want to have, a gym that's membership that you're paying for, kids that need raising, food. Like, what the F? How in the world are we supposed to manage all of that? And the answer is you're not. You're not supposed to do it all like that. You're supposed to do a handful of things really, really well. And so to the degree that you can spend a lot of time sharpening your axe and resting and sleeping and getting ready to put your best foot forward at work, what would happen if you started focusing on just laser focus on the thing that's the biggest blocker? Do it with all of your energy behind you. Do it with all of the tech and the delegation and the software and the AI that you could. And then do it in a way where you had walls that could encapsulate some equity gains and do it over a period of time to where you were able to get hypnotic rhythm working for you and you could compound your results over time with more labor, more force, more technique, more focus, more momentum, more morale, more capital, more software code, more content, more attention, more. You could literally get to that's where Microsoft came from, right? Two kids that worked together in high school and created the wealthiest people in the world. And not just the wealth that they created for themselves at Microsoft, but think about all the money that the productivity gains of their systems. I mean, it made trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars of increase in productivity around the world by making the computer personal. And whenever I see this wealth focused on individual people, you think that's pale in comparison to how much wealth they actually created, right? And
they might be a billionaire, but think about how many different multimillionaires that were created.
So much productivity. And so I think about those things. I think about the systems that these guys created. I think about what is controlled attention, controlled focus on a single constraint, repeated day after day after day until the thing breaks and you figure out, oh, there's another bigger constraint, and then you go work on that. And then all of a sudden, the natural, enthusiastic culture of humanity, the propensity that we have as business people and entrepreneurs to grow our business and to do things at a world-class level. Once the constraints are removed, you start to see that natural flow state from the people on your teams and your customers and your ecosystems that you're a part of. So that's why I built this cube. That's why I focused so hard on figuring out what the different aspects and the axes were so that I could say, what is the cube? What is it not? What does it contain? Where does it start? Where does it stop? And then how do we use that as leverage, as a guide moving forward to free ourselves from this whole concept of 80 and 100-hour weeks, just so we can make enough to feed ourselves.
Well, I'm certainly glad that you have allowed the flywheel to get spinning and continue going. And I'm so glad that I can see as your wife over the last 30 years that the real key to your success has been the playtime that you've been able to spend in considering and thinking about making your life better and being able to ensure that your family also benefits from a better life by way of continuing play in your laboratory laboratory of your mind, creating new things, continuing to have that circle of innovation moving forward. We thank you all for being a part of the Jeff Heilman Project and continuing to help come along with us in our success of this project. We're now over 300 subscribers on YouTube. We've got thousands and thousands of listens on all of the different podcasts.
Well, and the main thing is we have done what we set out 2 years ago to
different platforms.
We have created through this medium a time capsule, if you will, that our children and our grandchildren can go back and look and see that Jeff and Jessica Heilman were real people. We sat on real couch cushions that we bought at secondhand stores for $50 a piece. We have the lighting that Andrew set up. We're doing this in our room, which is a 12 by 12 framed room in our garage. I'm sitting here looking at a cabinet and fluorescent lighting in my car that's parked just 10 feet in front of me here. And we do this every week, and we publish content, and we are a presence in, some might say, a force.
Well,
to be reckoned with.
Force, and we're having fun doing it.
And we're having fun in the process of creating this content. So thanks for being with us, everybody, on the Jeff Heilman Project. We hope you tune in next time. Don't be a stranger.
God bless. Have an awesome rest of your week.